I've got Dr. Tani. He will introduce himself shortly. Debra Green, Joseph, Vambe, and Guichun. Yeah, great. Now, Dr. Tani, let me start with you. If you want to introduce yourself briefly, but also, if you can help us explore what does a good intercultural church, because your church is quite intercultural, you're doing some stuff in the community in Liverpool. What does a good intercultural church look like in everyday practice? Not just visual statements. We know a lot of people have visual statements, but we're talking of practical lived experience. There are a lot of leaders here that would love to hear that. Please introduce yourself first and the context.
I suppose the place to start would be Paul's picking up from what Paul was speaking on. That an intercultural church will look intercultural. Image is important. Image is very important. My dream, I had this dream many years ago when I was invited to meet with the Bishop of London to explore what the multicultural church, the term used, what the image would be like if it's explicit, if the city could see the intercultural church on the street. What impact would that have? What message would that convey to the city? And I think image means a lot. And when I mean image, it's not just image in terms of everybody on the street together, but also image in terms of when the church goes to do something, what do people see as the church? Yeah. So image means quite a lot. I'm Tani, I'm the senior pastor of Temple of Praise in Liverpool, and I also do so many things. We run a number of charities that we've set up to engage with our city region, and God is doing amazing things through them. We've recently released a manifesto as part of Churches Together in Northside region, and I'm part of the president.
You're very modest with that. I also know that Harmonize Academy came out of that church. An outstanding school in Liverpool. I was a trustee of that, so I know what to do there. Debra Green.
Yes.
I mean, you got Manchester. I mean, you've kind of. I don't know how to describe you though, but you are a city reformer, a community builder. From your experience, what does a healthy partnership between churches and communities look like? And how can faith communities contribute to social cohesion without seeking control or recognition?
So yes, I'm Debra, CEO of Redeeming Our Communities, which actually started here in Manchester in 2004. Worked alongside people like Dave King, and it's just great to see this gathering today. What does that look like? I think for me, it's about having a shared vision and a shared goal. We come together, and the networking piece is really important. Unity is important. We all know what the Bible says, where brothers and sisters dwell together in unity, there God has commanded a blessing, not just a small blessing, but a commanded blessing, and that's what we're doing here today. But it's what is that unity leading to? Unity is not actually the end, it's the means to the end. The end is social transformation. I was born in this city. We had a nickname, Gunchester, back in the 2000s, the early 2000s. I woke up one day and I thought, I can't be a Christian, live in this city, be born here, my parents here, my grandparents here, have a reputation, Gunchester, and not do anything about it. So we started working with Greater Manchester Police, And we saw front page headline news in the Manchester Evening News, and the actual headline said, "Is this the end of Manchester? Violent crime has fallen by 37% since the prayer meeting that we held 6 months earlier, where we said no more Manchester." Now we're with 37 police forces across the UK, and do you know what? We've got a lot more in common than we think. We all want safe, kind communities. We're all actually made in the image of God. Some people don't know it yet. I work with the Christian Police Association. Do you know how many members the CPA have got? They've got 4,000 members. There are 4,000 and many more Christian police officers in this country who want to work with the church. So it's actually about identifying that goal and working together toward that goal, and that actually enhances unity, because we're all working together, and if we work together, we've got to get to know one another and like one another, right? So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Deborah. Joseph, when I first met Joseph, we had a conversation, and you said you were in your mid-20s. Finished from the University of Cambridge. He's a counselor, politician. Joseph, and you work for Christian Aid. As a Christian politician, introduce yourself, but as a Christian politician, how does belief in the image of God shape the way you think about policy, justice, and representation?
Thank you, and good morning everyone. My name is Joseph Vambe. I work as a church relations manager at Christian Aid, and I'm here with my colleagues Pete, Osai, Lisa, and Alistair. So come and say hello to us at our store over there, and learn about what we are doing and how we can support your work to forward the intercultural church and intercultural mission, including a song that we've just launched today, an intercultural song. So come and hear from us about that song and lots more exciting things.
Is that song here? Do we have it?
Yeah, we can play that song.
At some point?
Yeah, we can play it on the screen. We'd love to talk to you about that. But I'm also a councillor in London, in South London. I was elected at the age of 22. And I think my belief stems from the foundation, which is 3 things. The first is that I fundamentally believe that God is a God of justice. The second is that I believe that I was called into politics. And the third is that I believe in the image of God and what that means in practice. And what that means in practice for me is that God is capable of doing things like showing up for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in a fire when they were supposedly burning under the king's commands. And so what that means in terms of my belief coming into politics, it means that I believe that God is transformational. And so that kind of very foundation, I think, just makes me different and makes me stand out and makes me think that I have a unique position when coming into politics that is definitely capable of building a world that is more just and more fair and away from poverty. And I think foundation is often an overused word, but it's a very important one, because it means that you have a base when things get tough, when things don't go right, when you look at the kind of state of the world domestically and internationally and think, wow, how can we move towards a more just world? But that foundation of belief in the image of God and what that means, I think, is very, very important. Yeah. And how that then shapes policy. Sorry, I'll stop speaking. How that shapes kind of policy, justice, and work against poverty, I think it's less about me, that's my approach to it. It's more about connecting with stakeholders in the community and understanding what our communities need, both locally and nationally and internationally. And I think as a church and as a group, what I've experienced is that we've become very individualized and very inward looking, and so that makes it difficult. But actually we need politicians, churches, community stakeholders working together to build that world because actually it's not for the politicians to tell what a community needs, for the community to tell politicians what they need, and that joined up approach. And so I'm really passionate about a church and a kind of society and a structure that works in partnership as opposed to separately.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I mean, one thing I know very much, we love intercultural church, we love diverse spaces, but it's hard work. Pastors? Any pastor in the room? Yeah. I mean, for 18 years I was in that space, church ministry. It's hard work. Conflict can also often come up, misunderstanding, difference. As we're thinking of today, I came across Dr. Guichun. He's kind of done a lot of work around conflict and reconciliation. If you want to introduce yourself, but I think there are some few questions I've got for you. One, when cultural, theological, or social conflict arises, what does good leadership look like? How can churches move from avoiding conflict to addressing it with grace, truth, and courage? What practices help communities listen deeply?
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you so much for the question. So my name is Guichun. I'm one of the learning and development managers within the Methodist Church. Prior to this role, I was a research tutor at Oxford Center for Business Studies. My research was about multicultural conflict in a multicultural urban congregation in Britain here. So, I think often we romanticize intercultural ministry. And this one already, someone mentioned about the Revelation chapter 7. Our church will be like the heavenly worship atmosphere. People from peoples, groups, and tribes, and languages, and nations, they will come and worship together in a very nice way. But in reality, we may face different conflict issues and types. So how does good leadership look like in this kind of conflict situations? Well, my answer is very simple. The first one is that we do not react, but we respond. Reaction means we jump into the situation with emotions. We fight, and we ignore sometimes. And also we try to find some quick solutions all the time, or easy fix. But I think those kind of things can escalate the intensity of the conflict issues itself. So how can we respond? Well, good leaders, they know how to demonstrate their incarnational presence in the messiness of conflict issues. So, God entered into this messy world through incarnation. And can you imagine a young family with 3 children, 3 years old, 5 and 7 years old, when they play with their toys in the living area? The living area is really messy. Suppose that all of them got sick and they are in bed. The living room is very quiet, tidy, and clean, but there is no living vitality. So messiness symbolizes a living vitality of God's people when they interact with each other. Do you agree with me? Yes. So having problem is not an issue. The real issue is that we do not know how to handle conflict issues in our congregations. So incarnation, the presence of the leaders in a very calm and gentle way, unanxious way, is really important. And then what we can do? We have to discern what is the intensity or nature or scale of the conflict itself collectively with other elders and leaders together. Because from my experience, most of conflict issues are multifaceted, multifactorial, multi-layered, multi-dimensional. They are interwoven with different factors. So, sitting together, seeking God's guidance, and discerning what is the root cause of the problem is really important for good leadership. Finally, because of different types of conflict issues, I think we have to bring a holistic ways of handling conflict issues. Often, church leaders, they bring two parties involved in a conflict issue, and they say, "Oh, we are Christians. Shake hands, hugging each other. Forgive now on the spot. Be reconciled, and put everything under the carpet." Well, actually, that does not work. That is called conflict resolution. But actually, we can have other approaches: conflict settlement, conflict management, conflict transformation, to make peace, to build peace, to keep peace as well.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Tani, how have you seen diversity, cultural diversity, strengthen discipleship, leadership, and mission, rather than dilute them? That's one. Okay. The second one is, what hard lessons have you learned in holding unity across cultures, generations, and traditions?
Okay. Let me start with the second question. Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. How have I seen?
What hard lessons have you
What
learned
hard lessons have I learned?
in holding unity across?
Yeah.
Because the church is quite diverse.
Yeah.
Across cultures, generations, and traditions.
One is the natural propensity for groups to migrate to what they're comfortable with.
Comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you have a church congregation and people come in, how do you stop them, the new ones, going naturally to where they're comfortable?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long before, the Bible talks about party spirit and dissension. These are real challenges when you're wanting to have a group that speaks with one voice and that love one another. So yeah, that is one challenge. The natural pull towards a group that looks like me.
Yeah.
So that's one. And so dealing with that it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge. And it really needs wisdom. It also needs representation at a level that can speak into the mess that will naturally evolve.
That's right. Yeah. You see why this conversation is very interesting. They didn't have to prepare for this. It's from lived experience.
Yeah.
So church leaders were speaking from lived experience.
Yeah. So there are many things to learn. I mean, I remember speaking in one conference about the 10 lessons that I learned from running a church with people from different experiences, not just racial, but also class.
Yeah.
It's another really messy situation that we have in church. Am I right?
Yeah, we're looking at that at some point.
And the natural thing is that church tends to move into a neutral space, which tends to be middle class type setting. But it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
And there's a time when we've got to really explore what it is who we are, and the need for every person to find their, or to be welcome and be received where they are.
Okay, I'll come back. Debra, I think you've been organizing some listening groups across the country. What changes do you see in a city or community when churches genuinely listen to local voices?
Yeah, so we've done around about 150 locations now. It looks a little bit like this room. People sit around tables. It's called ROC Conversation, Rock Conversation. We're just about to do one next week in Peterborough, commissioned by Cambridge Police. What it looks like really is looking at we all know, we're all quite familiar with the social needs in our community, I would say. We all have a pretty good idea about that. What we're not very good at is coming up with the solutions. So what we do is we get people round tables, we've got police, fire, we've got churches, we've got NHS, we've got education, schools, housing, businesses, people who live in the area, residents, we get them together round table. About 50% of the room would be Christian. That's a thing that really excites me. That we've got at least 50% of the room who would probably not call themselves a faith person. And they're all discussing the same issue. And we're coming up with solutions to issues. So just as an example, Derbyshire Police gave us the hardest to reach locality in Derbyshire, city centre, Abbey Ward, on the highest deprivation, the highest single parent families, the highest cost of living crisis, the highest crime, highest antisocial behaviour. And so to see what you can do. So we brought the whole community together, July 2024, for a conversation like this. And we set up a WhatsApp group. People started working together on shared goals, how to reduce crime, how to alleviate cost of living crisis, just getting to know one another, friendship groups, focus groups. And in November 2025, we were actually awarded the problem-solving award from Derbyshire Police, and went down to pick that up because the solution was that everybody working together, they managed to achieve a reduction on all of those social issues that we were, and it wasn't even rocket science, it was things like getting together for a coffee, talking to one another, visiting each other's projects, what the Bible calls preferring one another in love, setting aside our differences and collaboration, and not seeking to put our logos on everything, but just to work together in a collaborative way, and it was just an incredible experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And as church leaders, charity leaders, community leaders, how do you get involved in this in the place God has planted? After this conversation, we're going to have a roundtable conversation. You've heard so much this morning. It would be good that we begin to reflect together on a roundtable. Joseph, a young Christian, but also politician. Where do you see opportunities and limits for collaboration between faith and public life? Where do you see opportunities? As you work in both spaces. What do you see? How can you help us see? Help all of us see what you see.
Yeah, good question. I think there is, the need is there. We're speaking about intercultural church and bringing communities together. And I think when it comes to faith and politics and churches, sometimes churches and church leaders, we don't necessarily want to engage in politics because we're like, actually, let's stay out of this, and it's better that way, it's easier that way, and it can get a bit messy, which it can, and it obviously does get messy a lot of the time. But I think now what we're seeing is an attack, and in a sense that Christianity, in many cases here and around the world, is being, and Christian ideals and is being falsely used to justify racism and racist rhetoric. Yeah. And so actually, whereas in the past you might have thought, let me stay away, the need is there now. There's almost a battle for Christianity and the values that Christianity represents. And if we're talking about the intercultural church, then I think being political is no longer a choice, but it's actually a need. And I think that the way intercultural church wins, and the way we win this battle that we see that's happening here and internationally, is through a bit of both. It's through the kind of community organizing, bottom level through the people, as Debra's outlined, but also internationally, like organizations like Christian Aid do, and then also in collaboration with the top, with political power that creates structures, that creates the right structures and implements the right values, and that is held accountable. And I don't think one can exist without the other, and that's why I feel really fortunate to be at an organization like Christian Aid and also be a local politician. And I think a good illustration of this, and apologies in advance to the historians for the simplicity of this, but when you think about the early church and how the gospel spread, survived and spread radically despite persecution, that bottom level through informal networks, community organizing, that was how the gospel spread. But it was in the early 4th century when Emperor Constantine became a Christian that it was allowed to not only be tolerated, but then under further emperors, that it thrived. And so again, that just illustrates that it's the bottom level that allows that real empowerment, mobilization, but then there is an important role for the political power to really allow that work to flourish, to be held accountable. And so I think it's our duty to really be part of that bottom level, mobilizing community-based, again, domestically and internationally, because as we heard from our colleague at International Ministries, every human person has intrinsic value, and that's no matter where, across borders, but also at a top level too. And I think it's hand in hand that we can really create that intercultural church and allow for that intercultural mission to flourish.
Thank you so much for that. Guichun, how does our thing, Imago, made in the image and likeness of God, how does the understanding reshape the way we see one another in moments of tension?
Right, that is a really good question. So let me answer the question after answering your second part of the first question to me. Very short. So, I mean, good leaders, they know how to ask good questions. One better question is, who is right, who is wrong in this conflict? One good question is how we can foster a culture of peace and care and love, support, restoration, and transformation. Why the first one is a really wrong question? Because the first question aims to bring retributive justice by judgment and punishment. But the second question can bring restorative justice, not only restoring the victims, but also the offenders as well. So we can see a whole community transformed in this process. The first question may achieve conformity from diversity. The second question may achieve unity in diversity. Can you see the difference?
That's the wrong one.
I think so. So how you can do the latter one? Well, theological reflection. Good leaders, we have to know how to keep our congregations with theological reflection abilities. Let me give you one example. I was a choir master. We formed a new choir with 30 people, and we practiced several songs. And when the Sunday when we are supposed to perform the songs approaching, one lady raised her hand and she said, God was glorified. In our day, I mean, there are several dominant theories, as Dr. Paul mentioned this morning very well. I really enjoyed it. Such as functional similarities, and attribute similarities, and moral agency and spiritual agency. Wonderful, fantastic. But I have one small problem with that because they are very individualistic. It is my function, it is my attributes, my spiritual moral agency. Because we are based on the interpretation of verse 27 in chapter 1 of Genesis. It says, God created human beings in His image. But verse 26, one verse before 27 says, let us create our human beings in our image. Can you see that collective nature of God, communal existence of God? The triune God exists as one in unity. So we have to understand the image of God from this collective perspective. Because we are not alone. we are together as a community. So togetherness could be an important lens to understand the concept of image, the imago Dei, the image of God. So, in your congregation, if somebody comes to you and says, I don't like you, I disagree with you, it doesn't mean that we have to eliminate the person. The person is not our enemy. Still, the person is an important part of the collective image of God.
That's right. Yeah.
So, how this can help us to harmonize differences in our congregation? We have to have more collective sense of the image of God. I like the African idioms, Ubuntu. I like because we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Now, people, just 30 seconds. Anything that you want to leave with us? Anything? We just go around.
The world is watching us, particularly in the season we're in. And the church has a huge role to play in bringing the nation together.
Yes, sir.
And I think if we lose sight of that, we will answer to God for it.
Thank you so much for that. Awesome. Great. Round of applause for that.
So yeah, I've been a Christian for over 40 years and I'm a member of the church. Some people think I'm not a Christian. I am actually a Christian. But what I will say is do not be afraid to break out of the walls of the church. We've been given the Holy Spirit for a reason. We don't need to be afraid. We can actually see society transformed by working with our unchurched friends. And you know, I just don't want us to stay in our safe spaces. Get to know people in the community, ask them what's on their hearts, and begin to work with them. They don't bite.
James, Gen Z's are getting spirited open. What's going on there? What do you want to leave with us? Go for this.
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting time, and we've heard earlier on about the quiet revival. We shouldn't shy away that there is a battle that's being had, and we should embrace that because there is a revival. So let's kind of go beyond our churches, beyond our communities, and let's promote the intercultural church through all different facets, through theology, through our education, through worship. And that's why we launched that intercultural song, because it's like, okay, you can do the work on the ground, you can do the education, let's sing about justice, let's sing about, you know, a lot of our worship music can be very individualized and me. Actually, what about the community? What about all of us collectively?
That's right.
So doing it through all facets, and come and speak to us at us.
And during lunch, we would like to hear that music. Yeah.
Still, I want to emphasize the importance of togetherness and collective leadership. So we can go faster if we go alone, but we can go farther if we work together. So collectively remedy some different conflict issues, we can understand what is going on beyond what is going on is going on.
Thank you so much. Round of applause.